We're not doing this to replace ourselves. We're doing it to augment ourselves. We're still the humans. We're still the ones that want to have the relationship. Yes, somebody can pay for access to my digital clone. They want to invest in the human.
That's Jim Carter. He is an AI strategist to the world's top creators. And as of late, he's been helping them clone themselves.
And I can go as technical as you want.
I want you to go so deep with me that it's just exhausting. Like you're going to lay on the ground when this is over with.
In this conversation, Jim breaks down the technical side of what in the world is going on. And we also wrestle with the philosophical question of when should we not clone someone.
But you said you wouldn't choose to have a clone of him?
Yeah, I won't do it.
So after all this, I was so curious. Why not?
This is Jim Carter.
Jim Carter, you're sitting on an airplane and there's a stranger sitting next to you. And they're chitty chatty and they go, "What do you do for a living?" How do you respond to that?
Whatever it takes.
You say that?
Yeah, every time.
And then what do people say when you say that?
Well, that's the best part of it, because then that's what makes for a fun conversation. Everybody doesn't just check out as soon as you say something boring to them. I love those kind of conversations because, if we're at an entrepreneurs conference and all of us are traveling together on an airplane, those are very different conversations than the person you see at Starbucks typically.
Yeah.
But for me, I start with that because that really gets somebody saying like, oh, well, what does it take for you to light up, for what you to do? And for me, I just love finding ways to pair technology with people's big dreams, if I was kind of stretch it out. And that's why I'm excited to talk to you today.
Pairing technology with people's big dreams. Why, in your experience, do we have so much resistance to allowing technology to help us with our dreams?
For a few reasons. One is it just moves so fast, especially now. Technology is always evolving. So just when we think we understand how our iPhone works, they change it on us. Just when we think we understand how to recommend something on Netflix, they change the interface. Or just when we think we know how to order something in Starbucks, then they put a kiosk in. I'll just bring up Starbucks again. But in a world where we're always trying to keep up with technology and how fast it goes, it's not our fault for feeling like we're always falling behind or barely even scratching the surface. But then that's just as a consumer. When we think about it as like a business owner, somebody who has to choose, they intentionally want it to be in their business. They have to feel that it's the right choice, of all, like, I need a CRM. Oh God, where do I start? This is like dating, do I want to marry this thing? Like, you marry a CRM, so you got to date quick. You got to be decisive. So that there's all these feelings that come up a lot of the times. And then we pair it with, what does it cost? What's our time commitment? Do we actually feel that it's going to make a difference, or should I just pay a person to do it? Would it be more fun to have that human connection? All those things are just competing factors in the fact that it's like a forced necessity. I mean, here we are today. You and I are recording this virtually. I would love to be in person with you and record this in person. It just wasn't in the cards. So figuring out the link, making sure that everything is good, being in the right space, we adjust our lives towards technology because it's a necessary piece.
Yeah.
And I think there just comes a lot of resistance with the fact that we're just trying to keep up.
Well, there's a lot of resistance to adjusting to what's here. And talk about AI and the extent to which you are dabbling in AI and the things that are happening. Like, I feel like I'm pretty forward thinking and I'm pro AI and I have systems and I use some stuff, and so forth. I usually argue with people about AI, but then some of the things I've seen that you're creating, and I just listened to an interview with Keynote, Tom Bilyeu. He was talking about digital clones a couple of weeks ago, and you're playing with this I don't know if playing is the right word. You are building some shit out with digital clones. Even with me, who prides myself in being open-minded, I feel scared. And I don't even know of what. Maybe I'll be replaced. Maybe there are other entities out there that we don't know about, and AI is like actually a real human being, and we're all going to die. I mean, like there's some like existential crisis stuff I think that's coming up, and maybe this has always been the case. So like maybe throughout history, when the telephone came out, my great great grandma was tripping that she was going to die. I don't know. But I just know the conversations I'm having with creatives, the way that even I have felt, it feels so scary. And I don't like being scared.
I don't blame you. I think as humans, that's the fight or flight, right? Oh my God, there's a saber-toothed tiger coming into our cave. Are we going to die?
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but thank God. But it's the same as like, I got a wife and two kids. If I hear a bump in the night or a big bang, like I go into Papa Bear mode and I'm like,
Sure, sure.
oh God, where's my bat? What do I do? Turn on my ring light, do in the and try to get something going. So, when we're thinking about AI in particular and why it makes us scared, I would just invite you to reflect on the other times of your life where something big came up and you had to make a decision of if you were for it or against it, or you actually just were undecided because you hadn't had the time to learn about it yet. You know, um, like, do you take supplements? Or okay, so you ever go to the market and you look at the aisle of all the supplements and you're like, so I'm definitely not going to buy one of each of those.
Hmm.
So where do I start? What do I do? And then a lot of the times it's indecision. We're like, okay, maybe that's tomorrow's problem. But if you go your whole life without taking supplements, that's a lifetime of lost opportunity to have those supplements help you. That's the way I like to kind of think about this. So if we zoom way back, I mean, think about math teachers when the calculator was introduced. They rioted. They were just like, no one's ever going to do math again. No, like, no, no one's going to learn. They're not going to know the fundamentals. Could you imagine going to your CPA today and being like, hey, I just want to check in on my taxes. It's been a while. I haven't heard from you. Like, oh, I'm going to need about another month. Why? Well, I do everything by long division. It guarantees accuracy and all this stuff. You'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, put it into a spreadsheet. Let a function do it. Now, whether or not that's actual and factual, that's for us to decide. But if you don't have a tolerance for it, you move on. I
Yeah.
think of like when the tractor came about. We lost a lot of hardworking, sweat-based jobs of doing all this, from harvesting to planting to seeding to all these things to the tractor. Could you imagine how much ahead of lettuce would be today if we didn't have the
Hmm.
modern tractor? It would be nobody be eating lettuce. There'd be no salads. It's already expensive enough to get a salad, but can you
Yeah.
imagine?
Yeah.
So on the other side of it, this is where I think the conversation can expand. Is I truly believe that technology creates more jobs in the end for the things that it replaces. So if you're worried about it replacing you, okay, well, how do we make yourself irreplaceable? How do we do the things that actually touch on all of the human elements, like connection, relationships, trust, creativity? Those are things that AI is not taking, at least right now. So opportunities like this, yeah, we can do something creative with AI and come up with an avatar or a clone to have a conversation, but it doesn't replace human connection. And I don't see a world where it will, unless we will it as a society down the future. And that's a conversation for a different day. But for today, it's all about loving what you do and really just enjoying the process. Plus, we want to be able to charge a little bit and make some money for it along the way.
Have you ever thought about being an AI therapist?
Go
I'm
on.
just joking. I'm like, you would be such a good like therapist for the people to go to who are like struggling with AI because you talk so calmly and you're so practical. You're like, listen, you're gonna be okay. I'm like, thank you.
I do believe, you know, yeah, I Robot was a crazy movie. Do I think that all those Sentinels are just going to roll into my house today? No. Uh,
Yeah.
is it going to be tomorrow? I hope not. But it's up to us all as a society to make these choices about how we want to advocate, for
You're
this
right.
and where it is.
You're
So,
right.
in a world where a lot of things get worse before they get better, I don't necessarily think we're in the it's getting worse with AI before it gets better, but we're seeing signs of it from the Screen Actors Guild, you know,
Mm-hmm.
picketing about,
Mm-hmm.
okay, AI is
Mm-hmm.
taking this, to like all of these different I won't say micro, I'm not belittling any industries. I'm just saying all of these examples that are starting to come up that are becoming more real. If you are an actor, AI affects you. If you are a copywriter, AI affects you. There's all these key things. Photographers, you know, uh, you can create a really beautiful photo with unlimited revisions for a fraction of a dollar. Now with AI, do I need to go hire a photographer to get that one shot? Probably not. But AI is not going to shoot my wedding. I'm happily married. But like, there are still
Right,
certain
right, right.
things that I think, again, we are in control of choosing. And also, just as humans, we like investing in the things that bring us joy. That's why there's a fine art market. You know, the industry played with NFTs and things like that a while ago, and guess what? Those all crashed and burned. So
Watch it,
there's
man. I still got my NFTs, man. I'm
I
holding
do
out hope.
too. There, I got my wallet right here on the phone, and
I'm
I
telling you.
check it every once in a while and stay depressed. But yeah, it's just there's going to be these opportunities where we get to choose, and I do believe in that. I do believe that humanity will find the best in tech, as long as we don't get overwhelmed and get stuck in
Yeah.
indecision.
So now that we have calmed everybody's nervous systems and we can enter into this conversation with an open mind, let's have some fun. What is a digital clone?
Well, AI has this ability to take in a lot of knowledge and then express that back in however you prompt it, however you give it a directive. So, for what it's worth, if you have an apprentice, they're kind of a little bit of a clone of you. They're learning your ways, your mannerisms, your style of selling, of marketing, of doing whatever it is that you do. So, make it a little bit more real. For any of us that are listening or watching that have an executive assistant, a virtual assistant, somebody that helps prep emails, do things, they're kind of little clones of you. We're both parents. We have about as literal of a clone as it gets. Our kids are derivatives of us, right? They pick up on our mannerisms, our style, our way of raising them. So this isn't new to anybody. However, when you put AI into mix, with as quick as this industry is evolving, with the opportunities that are in front of us to use these AI tools, there's this really special mix where you can put things together and you can kind of clone yourself. And that's what I've been doing a lot of recently is I have a digital clone of myself and I work with the top creators in the world doing some of the biggest deployments and campaigns and things like that for all of those creators, people, their followers, their subscribers, their customers, to be able to pick their brain, to be able to go deep on a topic, to be able to expand on an idea, to be a thinking partner, to be a complement to what they're doing. So you get to ask yourself, what would it look like if I actually wanted somebody to pick my brain? What would it look like if my team had access to my mind and I didn't have to be there? And this is where it starts to get fun, is now we go from novelty to utility. When it's a utility, it's like, wow, this would really support my team for them to be able to ask digital me a question and see what Jim would say. This goes to a new product, something that I can sell. Somebody wants to be able to ask me anything, anytime, and pay for the privilege. Or the big one, wouldn't it be cool to be immortalized? What would that look like? Can you imagine a world where some of the top minds that we will never meet, we have no recorded, we have their written word, and sometimes even that, we spoke about religion, you can say what you will about the Bible. It's a collection of stories. How real, I'm using that in quotes, it is, we'll never know. That's part of the faith, right? But what would it be like if there was an authoritative stance for all the top minds and leaders and everything from this point forward for the rest of humanity? What would that do for future generations and everything else? So you really get to think about, man, it's not just about writing emails or replacing photographers. AI really opens us up to give us some, again, not go from novelty to utility, where we can do some amazing things that our minds have not even been able to comprehend yet because this is all new. It's not even table stakes yet. This is
Hmm.
just an opportunity in front of us and we get to create from it.
Okay. So I'm going to reflect back what I understand about digital clones, and you fill in the gaps and tell me what I'm missing here. What I understand is, let's say Heather has hundreds of hours of recordings of her talking on podcast and reels and maybe even Zoom calls, coaching calls, yada, yada, yada. I take all of those data points, all those conversations, and somehow create a learning model around that. And then based off her personality, the way that her mind works, the words that she used, the slang, y'all know we be saying y'all all the time.
That's it.
AI can predict how I would respond based off historically I've responded to similar questions. And so I create that model. So somebody then asks Heather a question, and that model goes and looks at my history and can predict what I would say.
You nailed it.
What am I missing?
I mean, I can go as technical as you
I
want
want you to
while
go
we're
so
chatting
deep
here.
with me that it's just exhausting. Like you're going to lay on the ground when this is over with, just tired.
I mean, you've met me, so watch what you ask for. But here we go. So first and foremost, you painted that picture beautifully. That really is what's happening. And I want to preface what I'm about to say when I explain the technology behind it with, as of today, like we're recording this October-ish,
Yep.
2025.
Yep.
AI is not creative. A lot of people think AI is this big creative superpower, but AI is a reflection of what we've trained it on. So the same way that you just expressed, it's going back and it's predicting what's coming up, you understand it. And that's what I want to make sure everybody here understands as well, is that right now, AI is not creating brand new. It's actually piecing together and building something that is representative of the next best thing that it wants to give you. So artists, rightfully so, are concerned about AI because it'll come up with styles and things like that, and it can represent things that feel like copyright. And that is factual. But at the end of the day, it's not creating brand new. And that's why this industry, I believe, is worth really, really paying attention to, because I'm not getting into an industry where it's all about lawsuits and legality and who's taking what from people. We're actually just representing minds and thoughts and original concepts. And like you said, whether it's Zoom or coaching calls or recordings, podcasts, things like that, we're edifying the words that have already been spoken. So I want to make sure that everybody who's really listening understands that. It's really, really important. Now, where AI goes from here, don't know. There will be a point where AI gets creative and it does create all brand new. And that's going to be a different day's conversation. But for right now and for the foreseeable future, yeah, you said it well. It's this opportunity for us to ingest all of this data, all this information, all of the words that have been spoken, your videos, your coaching calls, your Zoom calls, how just you getting things out of your head, your principles, the things you want to speak about, the things you don't want to speak about, you name it. And then we take it a little bit of a step further. We take all of that and we put it into an AI database. The technical term is called a vector database. It's a new way of storing data. So we have a traditional, if you will, database without going super tech. These are all logged into your hard drive. A vector database is where you take all of this information and it sort of like splits it up into almost like an array in different dimensions. And the really cool thing about that is then when AI goes to ask for it, it actually picks apart a lot of these different segments, and that's how it's able to piece it together. So if I ask your AI a question about your thoughts on religion, okay, at some point in the past, we'd like to hope that you have spoken about that topic, your thoughts, your takes, what you've said, that you've, who you are and the type of person, all these things. AI will scan and get all that information and bring it right back. And then again, it pieces together the story. So there's the literal way of the data moving around and let's just say having like a collection plate of everything available. But then the magic is where we actually train the model, train that AI to be able to produce something that makes it feel like you, sound like you, and have the pacing and the mannerisms and throw y'all in every once in a while. And that's how all of a sudden it goes from feeling like we're talking to ChatGPT to talking to Heather AI. And that's where it starts to get really magical, and where people start to build what I like to call this parasocial relationship, where you kind of feel like you're talking to the real person, but you know you're not, and that person's not catfishing you, but it actually feels like you're really talking to that person. And people are starting to build bonds with these relationships in the right way because the intention is true. We're not I'm not in the AI girlfriend space. That's the furthest thing from my agenda. But what I am in the space of is helping people to almost immortalize their words, bring their thoughts to life, and give other people the opportunity to be able to ask me anything at any time of the day and get a response that actually would be on par or better than the real me would say. And it opens up this incredible opportunity for then us, the content creator, the entrepreneur, the thought leader, to be creative the way that we are and lead with that.
About to have some fun, friend.
Let's
Ooh,
do it. Go
damn.
deeper.
I'm going to poke at what you said about AI not being creative,
Mm-hmm.
because to me, creativity is essentially taking two things and putting them together in a new way. Right. So I'm going to put these ingredients in and I'm going to mix them. It sounds like that is what AI is doing in these models, because it's predicting what I would say based on the context of what I've said in the past and what's being presented. So if somebody asks, not what's Heather's thoughts on religion, but let's say it's a truck driver from Minnesota who went through a divorce and is questioning religion, but they came from a personal development background and they're, this weird mixture scenario. Heather, what would you say? And so AI is having to be somewhat creative, because maybe I've never talked about that specific situation, but it's piecing together things that it thinks it knows about me. And that's where it gets interesting, and not to say it's wrong, but it is creatively coming up with what I would say. And maybe the nuance of that, I wouldn't necessarily say it that way. So it wouldn't necessarily always be right. It could be close. And that's where it gets crazy, thinking about thought leadership and, the way that you're impacting your communities and so forth, because it creatively is coming up with an idea. And even if it's very close to what I would say, it's me having to let go of control. And maybe this is the evolution that humanity is being asked right now, is letting go a little bit of like the perfectly stated response and getting to the heart and the meat of it. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do.
So I just threw up all over you. Pick something out of that. What do you think?
I'm going to pick out the piece that I love the most that you said about use a term called idea. So maybe let's zoom from creativity and settle on ideas. AI maybe is able to be creative in a sense that it can piece together and come up with nuanced pathways that maybe didn't exist in the past. That's the same as asking chat to mash up, my family photo with The Simpsons and create something that technically never existed on The Simpsons, but it feels creative. The fact is that it still requires the training of The Simpsons and my family in order to kind of do a collab, if you will. But if we think about it the other way, like you said with idea, there's yet to be new ideas being created out of AI.
Gotcha.
So this is where, if you just kind of play with this kind of technology, it might be hard to see, but when you really go deep on it, you'll find that you have levers, and you can slide these different levers different ways to have it respond. So you don't really see this in, let's just say, ChatGPT, but if you go a level deeper into like really working with the APIs, working with the models, trying to send the signals directly to the servers and get them back. For example, if I'm cloning you, if I'm building Heather AI, I have the opportunity to say, okay, well, what happens if it's asked a question that the real Heather never answered? Like maybe nobody's ever asked you about your thoughts on politics, so it doesn't have an answer. So there's a couple things we can do. One, we can have a rule that says never talk about this, or always talk about this. But here's the thing: if it's going to start to put information together that it doesn't have an authoritative answer for, we can choose, do we want it to be very strict, where it actually denies answering that because it doesn't have that information? Or do we want it to go all the way to the quote unquote creative mode, where it's actually conjuring and it's making things up, and that's actually dangerous because we really don't know what it's going to say.
Right.
Or we can kind of find a middle ground, so if we really just think about that scale, super strict, super quote unquote creative, or somewhere in the middle where it's more adaptive. And I like that adaptive mode because as the models get better, a creativity spike kind of comes up and you're like, wow, that's actually a really interesting way that it answered that. I wouldn't have thought of that, or if I did, I didn't think of that today. But at the same time, it's protecting you. It's understanding the things that we want to hold it within. If we think about, if we think about this as almost like an umbrella of policies, and that's a really heavy word, but let's just say rules, simple
Fair. Yeah.
guidelines, and guardrails, if you will, stay within this section. I have some clients that I work with that they do not want it to talk about their family life because that's not their business. Others, the family is the business. It should speak about it. I work with a celebrity sex therapist. You better believe that if someone asks a question about sexy time, it's got to answer it. But
Yeah.
for everybody else,
Yeah.
they don't want that. They don't want that responsibility, that burden. So you get to think about what it is that you do best. What is the content that supports it? What's this kind of umbrella of the way it should show up and should talk about? And then at the end of the day, how should it feel? How should it sound? How do we make it feel less like chat and more like you? And that is like the beautiful mix of all of those big pillars that actually make it become real.
That makes a lot of sense. What about this? I don't know if I've ever thought about this exactly until you and I are talking. So this is really messy thought. But it just occurred to me that in my mind, at least in the conversations I've had with friends, we're always like thinking how forward AI is. But when you break it down to what it actually is pulling from, it's actually pulling from the past. And so please tell me if I'm off on this. The way I'm thinking is like, it's not forward thinking. It's not coming up with fresh ideas. It is evolving, but it's evolving based off past information. So if I'm thinking about being a thought leader and creating a clone of myself, is there a way to create, this is a messy word, like an evolved bot where it's able to kind of grow with me? Because that would be something I'd be concerned about. I mean, from a tactical standpoint, maybe I don't believe what I said in that Zoom call 3 years ago anymore, but it is a data set. And then also, too, being able to serve my community better where they're not just living in the past, Heather, but they're having challenging, forward thinking conversations with the AI, even though it's a learning model from the past. I threw up on you again. I'm sorry.
No, we're parents. This
go.
wouldn't be the first time. This is a lot cleaner. There's a couple pieces to that definitely need further conversation, which is this is where we're starting to think about it in more of an applied way. So first of all, there's an easy answer to, okay, I said that 3 years ago on a Zoom, and that's kind of not the same anymore. That's not how I think anymore. I've evolved. I've changed. The beautiful thing about the way, remember we mentioned this new database system, the way it kind of scatters and puts everything in, everything's date stamped. So we're able to implement more or less a recency bias to the information that comes back. So, for example, let's say, I recorded with you years back. We had a great conversation. I'm sure I said something profound at some point, but guess what? It might be out of date today. So I may say something today, and I mean it just as much as I meant it 2 or 3 years ago. It's the same answer from me, but recency overrides what I said in the past. So that'd be the same for you. As you're explaining, as you're teaching, as you're talking about it, if somebody asks you a question, it can pull the most recent and you're good. It can be that simple. So that's the first one, is making sure everybody understands that it's not gonna, this information doesn't expire, get stale, it just continues to evolve. Then we have, let's just use a term like reinforcement training, right? Have you ever trained a dog? Have you ever tried to get your kids to understand that, they need to ask before they leave the dinner table? And finally, one time they ask, it's this concept of the more I reinforce good behavior, the better that I get out. And that's why I said previously, AI is a reflection of how we train it. So the model is indicative of how it operates. So you'll get a very different, not better or worse necessarily, just different way of having an output if you use OpenAI's models that gives us ChatGPT, Anthropic's models that gives us Claude, those kind of things. So this is where I have fun with it, is I try different ways of putting all this together and finding that perfect mix. And the same way that you'll continue to feed more information to a digital clone and it learns your voice over time and continues to grow with your knowledge. Well, the same way that we love let's say the memory feature of chat, if I go in and I say, hey, I'm recording with Heather in a little bit and we're talking about AI and it remembers that I talked to you a couple years ago. And say, well, last time you recorded with her, you talked about this and this. Like, we love those things now with AI where it's making our life better. These digital clones have that too. It'll remember key memories and takeaways. And if I say that I'm married, and my wife's name is Valerie, and my daughter's names are Hazel and Olive, and I have teenagers, then the next time it comes back to say something, it's not going to say your spouse. It's going to reference my wife by name. It's not just going to say your children. It's going to say your daughter or your daughters, or it'll give them. So AI is going to evolve with you as long as we use it, as long as we give it that reinforcement. And it's this beautiful mix of all of these elements. So with that in mind, yeah, it will grow with you. It will get better over time. And there will be these reinforcements that continue to make it better and better as we continue to use it. And before long, we're going to have our own little Netflix rating system for our own digital clones, if you will. The more you recommend these, the better it's going to get. The more times you say you don't like this, it pushes that away. And it's going to continue to craft that digital mind to get better and better.
Philosophical question, but do you think it will ever get to a point where it'll pass us with how we will respond, because it'll know quicker than we would? So I'm sitting next to my clone. You ask me a question. My clone will be able to generate a response of how I would respond before I can articulate my thoughts.
It already does.
Damn it.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are times where somebody will cold email me and my EA will pick up that email, and rather than bugging me about, hey, Jim, how do you want to respond to this? She runs it through my clone and she gets a good enough response. And I read them later and I'm like, huh, that's awesome. That worked. There's other times where I have paying clients that have access to my digital clone that will ask my digital clone before they ask me, because they don't want me to be like, dude, I already told you the answer to this. Like, why are you asking me the question again? There's going to be all these interesting cases along the way where these responses are not only good enough, they're actually great.
Yeah.
And they can be better. And this can open up a whole different box of what ifs and all these scenarios. But I really, really do believe that we're not doing this to replace ourselves. We're doing it to augment ourselves. We're still the humans. We're still the ones that want to have the relationship. Yes, somebody can pay for access to my digital clone, but they're not paying a retainer. They're not engaging. They're not investing in the AI. They want to invest in the human. Like, I didn't want to record with an AI version of you. I wanted to record with you. I wanted to have this time. So as long as we keep that human component, we're good. But I'd be lying if I said anything otherwise, because there have been testimonial after testimonial, after case study, after review, after all these things for all these clones that I built for people. They're like, that was the answer I needed, because we are simple at our root. If we have a question, we want an answer, and we lean towards the people that we believe can get us there quicker. But sometimes those people are also out of touch. And this really is an interesting gap divide change order that allows us to augment ourselves in a way to allow people to have access to us that normally maybe they wouldn't. And we get to think about, what would that actually be for us, our business, our life, everything in between.
2 examples that you sent me over text of some folks who are already using this.
Mm-hmm.
I was pleasantly surprised to see that they are in the health, spiritual, space, which might surprise folks because they may think AI is all about like transactions and scaling and it can be used in these ways, but not in other ways. And a lot of the spiritual weirdos who hang out with me, were questioning this spiritual the implications of AI and it guiding us in a spiritual element. And both these dudes who you sent me, you know, they're trusted with some pretty deep stuff. Some things really deal with our humanity and the way we move in this world and our health and so forth. So a high level question, but can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know for me, we start questioning if we get spiritual responses from AI, does it make it less spiritual?
That's a really, really wonderful question. I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that, but the beautiful thing about my maybe not fully wanting to answer that is any of us fully qualified to answer that? Like if we're looking towards somebody who is spiritual, they're not saints. They're not.
Yeah.
They haven't been gifted to us by God, the source, anything in between. They've just done more work than we have, which is why we're looking to them for it. So I'll give you an example. One of the ones I sent you, David Guillaume, he's a client. I've helped him with his digital clone. It's actually one of the more recent ones that we've launched. He has a wonderful following, a beautiful platform, such a heart-centered business model, the way that he does things like pay what you can, not like here's the price. They do so many wonderful things like that. And people have been loving having these audio conversations with David AI. And here's a couple of the reasons why. Again, I don't know if I'm fully qualified to actually give you a literal answer, but I'm going to give you examples of why it makes sense. One is we build affinity towards the people that we admire, right? So somebody in our entrepreneurial space that I just love is Brendan Burchard. He turned me on to personal development and all these things. So, I can't afford Brendan Burchard as a private coach. I'm sorry, I just can't. And if I did, my wife would have the locks changed when I got home, even if I tried. But Brendan will be the first to say also that his digital clone augments him. It doesn't replace him, right? Sitting presidents and massive, like he coaches Oprah. Like Oprah's not going to go right away and use his digital clone. She's got the real thing, but she knows how to invest in it. But for those of us mere mortals like me, I can actually tap into Brendan's brain and I can see what he would think about that. And that's what people are doing now, like with David and others. David had a program that he launched where it was about 22 days to create miracles. That was the name of the program. And not only did he have his material that everybody followed, we gave his AI so people could consume the material and then they could expand on the conversation. What do you mean about this? How does that apply? What about this? What if I'm thinking about that? And you could just expand. You can just enjoy that time. And the beautiful thing here is the nuance is what makes it special, right? And because we have that, let's say, adaptive, it is pulling a little bit of creative juice. But then at the same time, it's more reserved about the way he teaches and the methodologies. And we put a lot of work into making sure those guardrails are really well observed. So it's a wonderful, heartfelt, thoughtful, and personal response. And this is where it starts to get interesting because no matter how you kind of cut it, yes, it's his digital brain and it only knows what he knows and everything else. But let me switch over to Catholicism. So I'm Christian. I grew up Roman Catholic. You know about the Bible. And so if you've ever read the Bible, you got to read it again. That's the whole point of it, is like every time you read it, you pick up on something new, and it's stories and it's edifications of concepts and things. So I'll bring all this together, land the plane. David is known for taking the Kabbalah teachings and the oldest scriptures and things like that and translating it to new age things, something that's hard to do, but that's his specialty. People look to him for those translations and those concepts. What do you think we did with David's? We trained it on those teachings. He's not taking credit for it. The same way that my local pastor doesn't claim to have written the Bible. But you better believe when I go to church service on Sunday and he's reading Matthew 4:18 and he's citing whatever that passage is, he's edifying a message. He's speaking passionately towards the belief in it and what it means, how it translates to today. So when it comes to spiritual, that's the beauty of faith, is the same way that we taught David's on these teachings, and his AI is referencing it. We uploaded the King James Bible to my pastor's digital clone. And now if I have a follow-up question from Sunday, I can ask his digital clone and I feel connected to him. I feel like I'm part of the service again. You see where I'm kind of going with that? So it's not a right or wrong, or it's not a Boolean, like a true or a false. It's just well, what do you want to make of it? And at the end of the day, Heather, I just believe if technology can add value to your life, why are we so afraid of it? We should be leaning into it. I just happen to be all in on it, and this is the stuff I create.
Big ass question to end us here. If you don't mind sharing, one of the things you DM'd me about is your father, losing your father a few years ago. And I don't know if I misread what you said in your message, but you said you wouldn't choose to have a clone of him.
Yeah, I won't do it.
So after all this, I was so curious.
Yeah.
Why not?
Thank you for asking a hard question, and I definitely might tear up along the way, but it's because it means a lot to me. I have to give a little bit of backstory, and I have to tell this for my answer to make any sense. I lost my dad in 2009. My dad was justifiably my hero, right? I grew up in scouting. I spent every weekend with him. We were camping, everything. You met me in person, watching the video. That's why I have an eagle on my arm. It's my memory, of my dad being in scouting, achieving the rank of eagle. He never made it, so it was his dream for me to make it. So I had a really, really wonderful relationship with my pops. Cancer, unfortunately, took him. And my opinion, it's just way too early in life. So I have no regrets. I'll always love my dad. And I'd love nothing more than to have another conversation with him. And you see where this story gets interesting. I now have the ability with technology to be able to recreate a version of my dad, right? And the interesting thing is I thought about that. And my dad was never one to be in front of the camera. He was always the one taking pictures, taking videos. He had nothing recorded. And I was cleaning out the garage about a year or two ago, and I came across, those old like recording sticks, like before we had our iPhones, you could just you could hit record, and it was on like memory chip, and you had to plug it in and do all that stuff. Well, I threw a battery in there and I hit play, and I damn near fell to the floor because it was a recording of my dad. He had recorded a phone call that he had when he was doing a research project for something like our family tree. Total dad mode kind of a thing. Like he was calling a third uncle or whatever, and he was just learning, and he wanted to record it. And I mean, chills doesn't even begin to explain it. I realized I forgot what my dad's voice sounded like. So I quickly ripped the battery out, put it in the drawer. I'm like, that's a tomorrow problem. That's not something I'm going to think about today. And then I think everybody who's listening can kind of see where this story is going, is all of a sudden it hit me one day. I was like, wait, I actually have my dad's voice. I could not bring him back to life, but I could build an experience where I could actually ask my dad a question again, that kind of a thing. And at first I got really excited because I was like, oh my God, that's what I wanted to do. But then the logical side of my lizard brain kicked in for what I know. And then I realized, because I don't have his work, he never wrote books. He never did anything. He wasn't a creator like we do. We create these shows. We talk about the things we're passionate about. I realized it's so irresponsible of me to think that I could just bring that back without actually having his real work, his real words. He had never written a book. He didn't have a manifesto. He wasn't blogging. There was none of this. So again, I got excited because I was like, wow, I have the opportunity But then I got realistic and I said, because he didn't choose to, dare I say, immortalize his work, to put work out there, at the risk that I had a call with him, like he used to call me Sport. That was his name for me. At the risk that he would get on there and he would say, "Hey, buddy," like I would be on the floor shaking, crying profusely, because I wouldn't be honoring the whole reason that I was doing it. So when I told you I have the ability to clone people, well, it requires you actually want to do it. You want your work to be out there. You want that to survive you. So, yeah, unfortunately, I will never do that, and I'm okay with that. And it just honors the memory that I have of him. But this is why I'm so passionate about working with creators and people who do want their work to be out there and to help humanity. And I feel that just right from the beginning, what do? I do whatever it takes because I believe so much in how I compare technology with what really brings value into people's lives.
I bet he would be so proud of you for that, man.
Yeah, I know he is.
Yeah.
But that's what makes the difference. So thank you.
And I think this highlights the importance of good people using these tools, because the fact that you have this sense of morality of, right and wrong and what's what he would have wanted, and being conscious and thoughtful of that is obviously it speaks to you and your integrity, but also too it points to the importance of, if you do have a heart for people and you are wanting to make an impact in this world, like get behind the steering wheel of some of this tech, because we really do have the power to hypothetically and literally steer it in one way or another,
Very true.
One final question, we'll get out of here. But first, thank you so much for coming on and being so cool and being my AI therapist. You're a fantastic teacher, man. I'm sure you get told that all the time, but the way you can articulate things and bring it down is so helpful. I know you have a newsletter, and I also am a part of a Instagram chat group. Is there anything specifically you want to point our listeners to?
Yeah, thank you for that. I have one of the longest running AI newsletters. About 2 years now, I've been writing every single week. I just cover the biggest topics that I see coming up, and I really try my best to apply it the same way we talked about this. I like to understand something deeply rooted and then explain just how it affects people. Totally free, just my gift. It's not a paid Substack or anything like that. It's just my way of staying true to the commitment of creating, right? You better believe AI helps me prep everything and put it all together. But I love the process. I love the process of writing. So yeah, would love anybody to jump on the newsletter. JimCarter.me is my personal site. You can find that there, a bunch of AI tool resources. The only other thing is what we talked about. I have a digital clone of myself. So if you want to pick my brain, ask me a follow-up question, expand on something, play something out, think deeply about something with tech. It's trained on almost 1 million words that I have personally written or spoke. And you can find that at askjc3.com.
Well, that'll
And
be
that's
linked in
mine.
the show notes. Very last question. What is something in your life you are deeply questioning right now? It can be related to what we talked to. It could be something completely off topic. But what's been having a big question mark in your mind lately?
Why I waited until I was 44 to realize how much fun I'm having being an entrepreneur in a company of one single human. That's really it. I'm making more, having more fun. I've got so much more freedom, so much more time with my family. But just a couple of years ago, I was running a massive agency with tons of salary, employees, and overhead. And that was the latest version of something that I had closed before that and everything else. And I wonder why sometimes we have to push ourselves to the breaking point only to be surprised that we break. But now, if it's in my flow and the things that I'm doing, and hell yes, it's just a no thanks. And I love just passing it on to a friend who is better suited for it. I have so much more fun with friends taking my time. And I'm really questioning why it took until I was 44 to figure that out.
For any of the other 44-year-olds, 43-year-olds listening to this who want to shift slightly in that direction, what's step one?
Ooh,
Step
one. It kind of depends on where you're
I
at.
know this is another
No,
podcast, but
this is
just
definitely a part two.
high level, what you got
For
for me?
me, I'm going to reference something that our buddy Lewis Howes has taught for years, which is his concept of having a meaningful mission. It sounds noble, and it kind of is, but it's a noble of oneself. It's like honoring, okay, why do I show up? What am I doing here? Like, if I'm going to spend any time away from my family, things that my survival needs, why? What is it? And the same way that I started my AI newsletter before I was selling anything in AI and nobody was paying me for it, it was because I believed in it. And now it comes effortless because I have more fun. So I would say figure out what you want to have more fun doing. Ask yourself if you've paid enough dues to be able to earn the right to be able to stand up and say, yeah, I'm great at this. And just go for it. Life literally is too short. Take it from my dad.
Snapping it out.